The Walmart parking lot in Flagstaff, Arizona, was overflowing with life on that Saturday afternoon in early October. Minivans crawled between rows. Pickup trucks idled while trunks slammed shut. College students from Northern Arizona University laughed as they tossed ramen and soda into back seats. Tourists adjusted backpacks and checked maps, stocking up on road trip essentials before heading toward the Grand Canyon. It was loud, busy, ordinary. The kind of place where everyone blended into background. The kind of place where no one really looked at anyone else. 7-year-old Tyler Mendez looked at everyone. From the moment the automatic door slid shut behind him, his eyes never stopped moving. They darted from face to face, scanning the crowd with a desperation far beyond his years. His small hand was trapped in the tight grip of the woman beside him. Her fingers clamped around his wrist like a restraint instead of a guide. Tyler didn't cry. He'd learned that crying made her angry. Instead, he watched. He watched for uniforms. He watched for kindness. He watched for anyone who might notice that something was terribly wrong, because the woman holding him was not his mother. And if he didn't find help soon, he knew, deep in his stomach, where fear lived, he might never see his real parents again. Ray Crusher Bennett was already annoyed before he ever saw them. At 51 years old, with shoulders built from decades of discipline and a gray-streaked beard reaching halfway down his chest, Ray wasn't used to inconvenience bothering him. But his truck was in the shop, and that meant he was doing the week's grocery run on his Harley. Not ideal. He adjusted the saddlebags as he loaded bread, canned goods, and a sack of dog food, muttering under his breath about impractical errands and bad timing. Ray was president of the Northern Arizona chapter of the Granite Riders Motorcycle Club. To most people, that meant leather vests, loud engines, and intimidating silhouettes. To the community, it meant toy drives, veteran support programs, food runs, and outreach events. And to Ray himself, it meant a brotherhood he'd joined after retiring from the Phoenix Police Department, where he'd served for 26 years. You didn't spend that long as a cop without learning one thing. Your instincts never retired, which was why something tugged at his attention as he snapped the final saddlebag shut. He glanced up and froze. The woman stood out immediately. She was in her mid-30s, bleached blonde hair pulled tight, designer sunglasses perched on her head, even though the sun was already dipping behind cloud cover. Her makeup was heavy, too perfect, too intentional, and her outfit looked expensive in a way that screamed effort rather than ease. She was pushing a shopping cart toward a white SUV with California plates. Beside her was a boy, 7, maybe 8, and nothing about him fit. His Pokemon t-shirt was wrinkled and too small, the hem riding up when he walked. His basketball shorts were several sizes too big, held up by a knotted drawstring. One sock was white, the other black. His sneakers were scuffed, the soles worn thin. He looked like a kid dressed in whatever had been available. She looked like someone going out of her way to look composed. But that wasn't what stopped Ray's hands mid-motion. It was a boy's face. Ray had worked missing persons, Amber Alerts, child abduction cases that still woke him up some nights. He knew fear when he saw it, and this kid was terrified. Not loud terror, not flailing panic. This was a quiet kind, the kind that locked a child's shoulders tight and made their eyes too alert, too sharp. The boy's body was rigid as he walked, like he was bracing for something. His free hand lifted toward his face again and again, like he wanted to wipe his eyes or his nose, but each time he stopped himself, as if he'd learned that certain movements weren't allowed. And then there were his eyes. They kept searching parking lot, sweeping over strangers with a silent urgency that made Ray's chest tighten. The kid wasn't just looking. He was looking for help. The woman reached the SUV and popped the trunk. She began loading grocery bags with brisk efficiency. The boy stood still beside her, too still. Ray watched as the kid turned his head again, scanning the lot one more time. His gaze passed over Ray, moved on, then snapped back. Their eyes locked. Something electric passed between them. Ray felt that old familiar sensation ignite in his gut, the one that had guided him through decades of split-second decisions. Something is wrong. The boy stared at him for 3 seconds. It felt like 30. Then, very deliberately, the kid moved his lips, No sound, just exaggerated, careful shapes. "She's not my mom." Ray's blood turned to ice. The boy mouthed it again, slower this time, making sure Ray understood. "She's not my mom." Before Ray could even shift his weight, the woman's hand clamped down on the boy's shoulder and spun him around hard. "Get in the car, Tyler. Now!" Her voice was sharp, commanding, the kind of tone that didn't allow questions. Tyler obeyed instantly. No hesitation. No protest. He climbed into the back seat with the practiced compliance of a child who had learned that resistance made things worse. The trunk slammed shut. The woman got into the driver's seat. The engine turned over. Ray didn't think. He moved. In one fluid motion, Ray swung onto his Harley, fired the engine, and rode straight toward the only exit of the Walmart parking lot. Then he stopped. He turned the bike sideways, killed the engine, and planted his boots on the asphalt. The Harley blocked the entire lane. The white SUV rolled toward the exit, then braked hard when the driver saw a 6'2", 250-pound biker standing between her and the road. Ray could see her face clearly through the windshield. Annoyance, confusion, then calculation. She hit the horn. Once. Ray didn't move. She honked again, longer this time. Ray calmly reached into his vest, pulled out his phone, and raised it so she could see the screen as he dialed. Her eyes widened. The SUV jerked into reverse. But it was too late. 911, what's your emergency? "This is Ray Bennett," he said evenly. "Retired Phoenix PD. I'm at the Walmart on East Route 66 in Flagstaff." White SUV, California plates. He rattled off a number he'd already memorized. With a woman and a boy about 7 or 8 years old. The child just mouthed to me that she's not his mother. I blocked the parking lot exit. "I need units here immediately. This appears to be an abduction in progress." The dispatcher's tone sharpened instantly. "Sir, maintain your position if it's safe to do so. Units are being dispatched. Can you describe the occupants?" Ray did, never taking his eyes off the SUV as it reversed toward the far end of the lot. The woman was panicking now, turning her head, searching, looking for another way out. But this Walmart had been designed with only one vehicle entrance and exit, a security feature that was about to save a child's life. "She's trying to find another exit," Ray said into the phone. "There isn't one. She knows it. She's desperate. Officers are 2 minutes out. Stay on the line." The SUV stopped at the edge of the parking lot. The woman lifted her phone, gesturing wildly as she spoke to someone Ray couldn't hear. Through the tinted back window, Ray could just make out Tyler's small silhouette. Then the SUV lurched forward again, not toward the exit, toward the curb. "She's attempting to jump the curb on the northeast corner," Ray reported. The SUV hit the curb with a violent jolt, tires scraping as it bounced over the landscaping and burst onto the adjacent street. Ray swore, kicked the Harley to life, and roared after her. He wasn't letting that kid disappear. The chase spilled onto Route 66, heading east out of town. Ray stayed back, far enough to be safe, close enough to never lose sight. His Harley was faster, more agile. The woman knew it. She couldn't outrun him, and she knew police were coming. Within seconds, sirens screamed from side streets as 2 Flagstaff PD cruisers surged onto the road, lights flashing. The SUV was boxed in, police in front, biker behind. It pulled over. Officers exited with weapons drawn. "Driver, turn off the engine and show me your hands." Ray stopped 50 feet back, engine rumbling beneath him, ready if she tried anything. The woman stepped out slowly, hands raised, her face a mask of offended innocence. "Officer, what is this about? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just taking my son home." One officer kept her covered while the other approached the passenger side. The back door opened. The officer knelt. "Hey, buddy, what's your name?" Ray watched the officer's posture change, watched his shoulders tense, watched his hand rise to his radio. More units arrived within minutes. An unmarked car pulled in. A detective stepped out. She walked straight toward Ray. The detective stopped a few feet from Ray, studying him with sharp, assessing eyes that had seen too much to waste time on pleasantries. "I'm Detective Sarah-chan," she said. "Dispatch says you reported a possible abduction." Ray nodded and swung his leg off the bike. "Yes, ma'am. I was loading groceries when I saw the kid. His behavior was wrong. Fear response. Scanning for help. He mouthed to me twice, 'She's not my mom.' Direct eye contact. Clear intent." Chin didn't interrupt. She listened the way good detectives did. "I'm former Phoenix PD." Ray continued. 26 years. Missing persons, child abductions. That wasn't a custody issue. That was a scared kid who knew he was in danger. Chen's jaw tightened. "Your instincts were right." She glanced back toward the SUV, where officers were now shielding the boy from view, while another unit cuffed a woman, who was loudly protesting her innocence. "The child is Tyler Mendez. 7 years old," Chen said. "Reported missing from a park in San Diego 3 days ago." Ray felt something heavy settle in his chest. 3 days? Chen nodded. "The woman is Jennifer Kessler. She was a volunteer at his after-school program. We're still piecing together the details, but she's been wanted for questioning since the disappearance." Ray exhaled slowly. 3 days in a stranger's control. 3 days of fear. 3 days where this could have ended very differently. "How's the kid?" he asked quietly. "Shaken," Chin said, "but physically unharmed. We're getting him checked out now. His parents are driving in from San Diego. They should be here in about 4 hours. She paused and met Ray's eyes. "Mr. Bennett, if you hadn't acted, if she'd reached the interstate..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. They both knew how those stories ended. Later that evening, Ray sat in a small interview room at the Flagstaff police station, giving his formal statement. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion and a quiet, simmering anger at how close this had come to tragedy. The door opened again. Detective Chin stepped in, accompanied by a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a calm presence. "This is Linda," Chin said. "She's a victim advocate." Linda offered a gentle smile. "Mr. Bennett, Tyler asked if he could meet you." Ray straightened. Is that okay?" "We normally wouldn't," Linda said softly. "But given the circumstances, and the fact that you're the one he signaled for help, we think it could help him. And you, only if you're comfortable." Ray swallowed and nodded. "Yes, of course." A moment later, Tyler stepped into the room. He looked different already. Clean clothes that actually fit, hair neatly combed, his face scrubbed free of dried tears and dirt. But his eyes still carried shadows. When Tyler saw Ray, his face crumpled and relief flooded his expression. "You saw me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I tried to tell lots of people, but they didn't see. You saw me." Ray knelt down so they were eye level. His voice came out rougher than he intended. "You were very brave, Tyler. You didn't give up. That took courage." Tyler nodded solemnly. "My teacher said stranger danger. But she also said if you're in real danger, you can ask anyone for help, even strangers." Ray smiled gently. "She's right. She said look for police or firefighters, or moms with kids." Tyler glanced down, then back up. "But I saw you. You had a motorcycle. You looked strong. I thought maybe you could help." "You thought right, kid." Tyler's lip trembled. "She said my mom was hurt, that she was taking me to her. But it didn't feel right. She wouldn't let me call. She got mad when I asked questions. I was really scared." Linda knelt beside him, resting a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Tyler, you did everything right. You trusted your instincts." Tyler wiped his eyes with his sleeve and looked at Ray again. "Thank you for blocking the car. Thank you for not letting her take me away." Ray nodded once. "Anytime, kid. Anytime." For hours later, Tyler's parents arrived. Ray stayed. He couldn't bring himself to leave before seeing the end of this story. When the station doors opened and Maria Mendez rushed inside, Tyler broke free from the chair and ran. "Mom!" Maria dropped to her knees, wrapping her son in her arms, sobbing into his hair. Marco Mendez stood behind them, hands shaking, tears streaming down his face. The family clung to each other, time dissolving around them. Every officer in the room looked away. When they finally separated, Maria searched the room until her eyes found Ray. She walked over, still holding Tyler's hand. "You're the man who saw him?" she asked, voice breaking. "The one who blocked the exit?" "Yes, ma'am. My baby was missing for 3 days," she sobbed. 74 hours. Every second, I thought I'd never see him again. Marco stepped forward. "The detective told us everything. You gave us back our son. How do parents thank someone for that?" Ray shook his head. "You don't. You just hold him tight." Maria pulled him into a fierce hug. Ray, who had survived combat and decades of police work, felt his eyes burn. Tyler tugged on Ray's vest. "Can I show my parents your motorcycle?" I told them about it. Ray smiled. "Yeah, kid, let's go." Outside, Tyler excitedly explained how the Harley blocked the exit, how loud it was, how Ray chased the car. For a moment, he was just a 7-year-old boy again. "Can I sit on it?" Tyler asked. Ray looked at Maria and Marco. They nodded. Ray lifted Tyler onto the seat. The boy's face lit up with his first genuine smile in days. "When I grow up," Tyler announced, "I'm going to have a motorcycle like this, and I'm going to help people." "That's a good plan," Ray said softly. The Mendez family stayed in Flagstaff for 2 days while Tyler was evaluated by child psychologists and the investigation continued. Before heading back to San Diego, they met Ray at a diner. "We want you to be part of Tyler's life," Maria said. "If you're willing." "I'd be honored," Ray replied, and they did stay in touch. Years passed. Tyler went through therapy. He healed. He grew into a confident kid who spoke at his school about trusting your instincts and asking for help. When he turned 10, the Mendez family visited Flagstaff. Tyler rode with Ray through the Arizona mountains, wearing full safety gear, laughing into the wind. That night, over dinner, Tyler said, "Being scared doesn't mean you're weak. Asking for help is brave." "Who taught you that?" Ray asked. "My therapist," Tyler said. "And you?" "Because you listened." Ray looked at him for a long moment. "You taught me something, too." "What?" "That paying attention matters." The Granite Riders MC launched the Eyes Open initiative after Tyler's rescue. Workshops, community training, awareness campaigns. Over 5 years, members intervened in 3 more cases. Each time, someone paid attention. Each time, someone trusted their gut. Each time, a life was saved. Ray kept one thing from that day: a grainy security camera still of Tyler mouthing, "She's not my mom." It hung in the clubhouse with words Tyler wrote years later. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. Sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is notice. When Tyler turned 16, he showed up at a Granite Riders event wearing a shirt he designed himself. A motorcycle blocking an exit. The words, "She's not my mom. If something feels wrong, speak up. Someone is watching. Someone will help." He sold 50 shirts and donated every dollar to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. "You helped raise me," Tyler told Ray. Ray smiled, because the truth was simple. One person paying attention can save a life. And sometimes all it takes is seeing someone who's trying to be seen.